It's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. Well, I'm going to read the second part of chapter 27 from The Long Winter by Laura Ingalls Wilder. So Cap and Almanzo found the man and the farm where the wheat was grown. So he invited them in, and they're taking care of their horses first. The end of the stable was partitioned off with poles and a rough door, and grains of wheat had trickled through the crack. Almanzo and Cap looked at it and grinned at each other. They watered Prince and the buckskin from the well at the door, fed them oats, and left them tied to a manger full of hay besides Anderson's team of black horses. They had followed Anderson to the house. Then they followed Anderson to the house under the snowbank. The room's low ceiling was made of poles covered with hay and sagging under the weight of the snow. The walls were sawed. Anderson left the door ajar, a little bit open, to let in a little light. "I haven't got my windows shoveled out since the last blow," he said. "The snow piles over the little rise to the northwest and covers me up. Keeps the place so warm I don't need much fuel. Sod houses are the warmest there are anyway." The room was warm and steamy from the kettle boiling on the stove. Anderson's dinner was on a rough table built against the wall. He urged them to draw up and eat with him. He had not seen a soul since last October, when he'd gone to town and brought home his winter supplies. Almanzo and Cap sat down with him and ate heartily of the boiled beans, sourdough biscuit, and dried applesauce. The hot food and coffee warmed them, and their thawing feet burned painfully, so they knew they weren't frozen. Almanzo mentioned to Mr. Anderson that he and Cap might buy some wheat. "I'm not selling any," Mr. Anderson said flatly. "All I've raised I'm keeping for seed." "What are you buying wheat for this time of year?" he wanted to know. They had to tell him that the trains had stopped running and the people in the town were hungry. "There's women and children that haven't had a square meal since Christmas," Almanzo put to him. "They've got to get something to eat or they'll starve to death before spring." "That's not my lookout," said Mr. Anderson. "Nobody's responsible for other folks that haven't got enough forethought to take care of themselves." "Nobody thinks you are," Almanzo retorted, "and nobody's asking you to give them anything. We'll pay you full elevator price of 82 cents a barrel and save you hauling it to town into the bargain." "I've got no wheat to sell," Mr. Anderson answered, and Almanzo knew he meant what he said. Cap came in then, his smile flashing, his raw red face chapped from the icy wind. "We're open and above board with you, Mr. Anderson. We've put our cards on the table. The folks in town have got to have some of your wheat or they'll starve." "All right. They've got to pay for it. What will you take?" "I'm not trying to take advantage of you boys," Mr. Anderson said. "I don't want to sell. That's my seed wheat. It's next year's crop. I could have sold it last fall if I was going to sell it." Almanzo quickly decided. "We'll make it $1 a bushel," he said. 18 cents a bushel above market price. "And don't forget, we'll do the hauling to boot." "I'm not selling my seed," Mr. Anderson said. "I gotta make a crop next summer." Almanzo said meditatively, "Man can always buy seed. Most folks out here are going to. You're throwing away a clear profit of 18 cents a bushel above market price, Mr. Anderson." "How do you know they'll ship in seed wheat in time for sowing?" Mr. Anderson demanded. Cap asked him reasonably, "Well, for that matter, how do you know you'll make a crop? Say you turn down this cash offer and sow your wheat. Hailstones liable to hit it, or grasshoppers. That's true enough, Mr. Anderson admitted. The one thing you're sure of is cash in your pocket, said Amanzo. Mr. Anderson slowly shook his head. No, I'm not selling. I like to killed myself breaking 40 acres last summer. I've got to keep the seed to sow it. Amanzo and Cap looked at each other. Amanzo took out his wallet. We'll give you $1.25 a bushel, cash. He laid the stack of bills on the table. Mr. Anderson hesitated. Then he took his gaze away from the money. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, Cap said. Mr. Anderson glanced again at the bills in spite of himself. Then he leaned back and considered. He scratched his head. Well, he said finally, I might sow some oats. Neither Cap nor Amanzo said anything. They knew his mind was quivering in the balance, and if he decided against selling, he would not change his mind. At last he decided, I guess I could let you have around 60 bushels at that price. Amanzo and Cap rose quickly from the table. Come on, let's get it loaded, said Cap. We're a long way from home. Mr. Anderson urged them to stay the night, but Amanzo agreed with Cap. Thanks just the same, he said hurriedly. But one day's all we've got between blizzards lately, and it's past noon now. We're already late getting started back. The wheat's not sacked, Mr. Anderson pointed out, but Amanzo said, we brought sacks. They hurried to the stable. Mr. Anderson helped them shovel the wheat from the bin into the 2-bushel sacks, and they loaded the sleds. While they hitched up, they asked Mr. Anderson how best to get across the slough, but he had not crossed it that winter, and for lack of landmarks, he could not show them exactly where he had driven through the grass last summer. You boys better spend the night here, he urged them again, but they told him goodbye and started home. They drove from the shelter of the big snowbank into the piercing cold wind, and they'd hardly begun to cross the flat valley when Prince broke down into an air pocket. Swinging out to circle the dangerous place, Cap's buckskin felt the snow give way under him so suddenly he screamed when he went plunging down. The horse's scream was horrible. For a moment, Amanzo had all he could do to keep Prince quiet. Then he saw Cap down in the snow, hanging on frantically to the buckskin by the bits. Plunging and rearing, the buckskin almost jerked Cap's sled into the hole. It tipped to the very edge, and the load of wheat slid partly off it. All right? Amanzo asked when the buckskin seemed quiet. Yep, Amanzo answered. Then for some time they worked, each unhitching his own horse down in the broken snow and wiry grass, and floundering about it, trampling and stomping to make solid footing for the horse. They came up chilled to the bone and covered with snow. This is what it looked like when they went down. They tied both horses to Amanzo's sled, then unloaded Cap's sled, dragged it back from the hole, and piled the snowy 125-pound sacks onto it again. They hitched up again. It was hard to make their numb fingers buckle the stiff, cold straps. And gingerly once more, Amanzo drove on across the treacherous slough. Prince went down again, but fortunately the buckskin didn't. With Cap to help, it did not take so long to get Prince out once more. With no further trouble, they loaded and reached the upland. Amanzo stopped there and asked Cap, "Think we better try to pick our trail back?" "Nope," Cap answered, "Better head out for town. We've got no time to lose." The horses' hooves and sleds had made no tracks in the hard snow crust. Only marks were scattered holes where they'd floundered in the slough, and these lay east of their way home. Monzo headed towards the northwest, across the wide prairie, white in the covering of snow. His shadow was his only guide. One prairie swell was like another. One snow-colored slough differed from the next only in size. To cross the lowland meant taking the risk of breaking down and losing time. To follow the ridges of the higher ground meant more miles to travel. The horses were growing tired. They were afraid of falling into the hidden holes in the snow, and this fear added to their tiredness. Time after time they did fall through the thin snow cap. Cap and Monzo had to do the whole thing over to get them hitched up again. They plodded on into the sharp cold of the wind, too tired now to trot with their heavy loads. The horses did not go fast enough, so Monzo and Cap could run by the sleds. They could only stamp their feet hard as they walked to keep them from freezing, and beat their arms against their chests. They grew colder. Monzo's feet no longer felt shock when he stamped them. The hand that held the line was so stiff that the fingers would not unclasp, they wouldn't let go. But the lines around his shoulders to leave both, he put the lines around his shoulders to leave both hands free. And with every step, he whipped his hands across his chest to keep the blood moving in them. "Hey, Wilder," Cap said, "aren't we heading too straight north?" "How do I know?" Monzo called back. They plodded on. Again, Prince went down and stood drooping head while Monzo unhitched and trampled the snow and let him out and hitched him up again. They climbed to an upland, followed it around the slough, went down to cross another slough, and poor Prince went down again. "You want me to take the lead for a while?" Cap asked, when Monzo had hitched up again. "Save you and Prince the brunt of it?" "Suits me," said Monzo. "We'll take turns." After that, when a horse went down, the other took the lead until he went down. The sun was low and the haze was thickening in the northwest. "We ought to see the lone cottonwood from that rise ahead," Monzo said to Cap. After a moment, Cap answered, "Yes, I think we will." But when they topped the rise, there was nothing but the same endless, empty waves of snow beyond, and the thick haze low in the northwest. Monzo and Cap looked at it, then spoke to their horses and went on, but they kept the sleds closer together. The sun was setting red in the cold sky when they saw the bare top of the lone cottonwood away to the northwest. In the northeast. In the northwest, the blizzard cloud was plain to be seen, low against the horizon. "It seems to be hanging off," Monzo said. "I've been watching it from way back." "So have I," said Cap. "But we better forget about being cold and drive. Let's ride a while." "You bet," Monzo agreed. "I could do with a few minutes' rest." They said nothing more except to urge the tired horses to a faster walk. Cap led the way straight over the rises and straight across the hollows into the teeth of the wind. Heads bent against it, they kept going until the buckskin broke through the snow crust. Monzo was so close behind that he could not avoid the hidden air hole. He turned quickly aside, but Prince went down near the buckskin. Between them, the whole crust of snow gave away, and Monzo's sled tipped, load and all, into the broken snow and grass. Darkness slowly settled down while Cap helped Almanzo drag back the sled and dig out and carry the heavy sacks of wheat. The snow was palely luminous. Luminous is the word we get for light. The wind had died. Not a breath of air moved in the darkening stillness. Stars shone in the sky overhead, and to the south and the east, but low in the north and the west, the sky was black, and the blackness rose, blotting out the stars one by one. "We're in for it, I guess," Cap said. "We must be nearly there," Almanzo answered. He spoke to Prince and moved on ahead. Cap followed. He and the sled, a bulk followed Cap. He and the sled, a bulky shadow moving over the dim whiteness of the snow. Before them, in the sky, star after star went out as the black cloud rose. Quietly, Almanzo and Cap spoke to the tired horses, urging them on. "Come on, you can do it." There was still the neck of the big slough. They could not see the swells or the hollows now. They could only see a little way by the paleness of the snow and the faint starshine. That's the end of chapter 27. Well, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. I'm sure that those young men were pretty scared that they were about to be overtaken by that blizzard. And I am sure that that was a scary thing. But we'll see what happens tomorrow. I want to pray blessings on you and yours, in your house, out of your house, in the day and in the night. Whatever you do, keep dreaming. Good night.